Hello learners, Namaskar. I am Pragya welcoming you in your YouTube channel English Seeker. Today I will discuss about the fourth chapter of the book Flamingo and that's title is the Rattrap. So the very first we will see about the author in a glance, then we will discuss about the summary of the chapter. So let's start. The writer of this chapter is Selma Lagerlof, whose complete name is Selma Ottilima Lovisa Lagerlof. She was a Swedish writer who was born on 20th November 1858 and died on 16th March 1940. She was a Swedish writer. She published her first novel, Ghosta Berling's Saga, at the age of 33. She was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in Literature, which she was awarded in 1909. Additionally, she was the first woman to be granted a membership in the Swedish Academy in 1914. If I will talk about her writings, so her stories were so famous that they were translated into many languages. The universal theme turns through all of them a belief that the essential goodness in a human being can be awakened through understanding and love. This story is set amidst the mines of Sweden rich in iron ore, which figure large in the history and legends of that country. The story is told somewhat in the manner of a fairy tale. The metaphor of the rat trap serves the highlight the human predicament. The material benefits are the traps that most human beings are prone to fall into. Human beings do have a tendency to remedy themselves from dishonest ways, as does the peddler at the end of the story. So now I am going to start the summary of the story. So let's see, page by page I will explain you. So let's see. On the very first page, it is told that once there was a man who went around selling small rat traps of wire. He made them himself, but his business was not profitable, so he had to beg and steal a bit to keep himself alive. His clothes were in rags, his cheeks were sunken, and hunger would be noticed in his eyes. His life was sad and monotonous. He had no company. One day he was struck by an idea that the whole world was nothing but a big rat trap. It set baits for people by offering riches and joy, shelter and food, heat and clothing, exactly as the rat trap offered cheese and pork. As soon as anyone let himself be tempted to touch the bait, the rat trap closed in on him, and then everything came to an end. One dark evening, he was walking slowly with heavy steps when he saw a little grey cottage by the roadside. He knocked at the door to ask shelter for the night. The owner was an old man. He had no wife or child. He was happy to get someone to talk to in his loneliness. He served him porridge for supper and gave him tobacco for his pipe. Then he got out an old pack of cards and played modulus with his guest till bedtime. The host had been a crofter at Ramjo Iron Works in his days of prosperity. He had worked on the land. Now he was unable to do day labor. It was his cow that supported him. This extraordinary cow could give milk for the creamery everywhere. He informed the stranger that last month he had received all of 30 kroner in payment. The crofter showed his guest three wrinkled 10 kroner bills which he had taken out of a leather pouch hanging on a nail in the window frame. The next day, both men got up early. The crofter was in a hurry to milk his cow. The other man did not want to stay in bed when the host had got up. They left the cottage at the same time. The crofter locked the door and put the key in his pocket. The man with the rat traps said goodbye and thanked his host and went away. Half an hour later, the rat trap peddler returned. He broke a window pane, stuck in his hand and got hold of the pouch with the 30 kroner. He took out the money and thrust it into his pocket. Then he hung the leather pouch very carefully back in its place and went away. He felt pleased with his smartness. Then he realized that he dared not continue on the public highway, so he took to the woods. He got into a big and confusing forest. He kept on walking without coming to the end of the forest. He realized that he had only been walking around in the same part of the forest, he thought that he had let himself be fooled by a bait and had been caught. The whole forest seemed to him like an impenetrable prison from which he could never escape. It was late in winter. Darkness increased the danger as also his gloom and despair. He sank down on the ground as he was quite tired. He heard the sound of hammer strokes. He summoned all his strength, got up and staggered in the direction of the sound. He reached a forge where the master smith and his helper sat near the furnace waiting for the pig iron to be ready to put on the anvil. There was many sounds. Big bellows groaned, burning coal cracked. The fireboy swallowed charcoal with a great deal of clatter. The waterfall roared a sharp north wind wiped the rain against the brick-tiled roof. On account of all these noises, the blacksmith did not notice that a man had opened the gate and entered the forge until the stranger stood up to the furnace. The blacksmith glanced only casually and indifferently at the intruder with a long beard, dirty ragged, and with a bunch of rat traps dangling on his chest. The peddler asked for permission to stay. The master blacksmith nodded a haughty consent without saying a word. Just then, the iron master, who owned the Ramjo iron mill, came into the forge on one of his nightly round of inspection. The iron master saw that a person in dirty torn clothes had moved so close to the furnace that steam was rising from his wet rags. He walked close up to him, looked him over very carefully. Then he tore off his hat, which had a wide, flexible brim, to get a better view of his face. He called him Nals Olf and wondered how he looked. The man with the rat traps had never before seen the iron master at Ramjo and did not even know what his name was. He thought that the iron master might perhaps throw his old acquaintance a couple of kroner, so he did not tell him that he was mistaken. The iron master observed that he should not have resigned from the regiment. Then he asked the stranger to come home with him. The tramp did not agree. He thought of the 30 kroner going up to the manor house would be like throwing himself into the lion's den. So the iron master assumed that he felt embarrassed because of his miserable clothing. He said that his wife Elizabeth was dead, his boys were abroad, and only his oldest daughter was with him. He invited the stranger to spend Christmas with them. The stranger said no thrice. The iron master told Turner and the blacksmith that Captain Von Estal preferred to stay with him that night. He laughed to himself and went away. So half an hour later, the sound of the carriage wheels was heard outside the forge. The ironmaster's daughter came there, followed by a valet carrying a big fur coat. She introduced herself as Adela Williamson. She noticed that the man was afraid. She thought that either he had stolen something or else he had escaped from jail. She, however, assumed him that he would be allowed to leave them just as freely as he had come. She addressed him as captain and requested him to stay with them for over Christmas Eve. She said this in such a friendly manner that the Rattrap peddler agreed to go with her. The fur coat was thrown over him, his rags, and he followed the young lady to the carriage. On the way, the peddler thought why he had taken that fellow's money. He was sitting in the trap and would never get out of it. The next day, the Christmas Eve, the ironmaster came into the dining room for breakfast. He thought of his old regimental comrade whom he had met so unexpectedly. He felt satisfied and talked of feeding him well and giving him some honorable job. His daughter remarked that last night she did not notice anything about him to show that he had once been an educated man. The ironmaster asked her to have patience and let him get clear and dressed up. Then she would see something different. The tramp manners would fall away from him with the tramp clothes. Just then the stranger entered in the good-looking suit of clothes, a white shirt with a stressed collar and whole shoes. Although he was well groomed, the ironmaster did not seem pleased. He realized that he had made a mistake last night. Now, in broad daylight, it was impossible to mistake him for an old acquaintance. The stranger made no attempt to dissemble. He exclaimed that it was not his fault. He had never pretended to be anything but a poor trader. He had requested the ironmaster to let him stay in the forge. He was ready to put on his rags and go away. The ironmaster thought that he was not honest on the part of the man and wanted to call the sheriff. The tramp then told the ironmaster that the whole world was nothing but a big rat trap. All the good things that were offered to him were nothing but cheese, rinds, and baits of pork, set out to drag a poor fellow into trouble. The sheriff may lock him up for this. He warned the ironmaster that a day might come when he might want to get a big piece of pork, and then he would get caught in the trap. The ironmaster began to laugh. He dropped the idea of informing the sheriff. However, he asked the tramp to leave and opened the door. Just then, his daughter entered and asked her father what he was doing. That morning, she was quite happy. She wanted to make things for the rat quite home-like, so she spoke in favor of the vagabond. She wanted him to enjoy a day of peace with them, just one in the whole year. She knew that there was a mistake, but they should not chase away a human being whom they had asked to come there and promised Christmas cheer. The ironmaster hoped that she wouldn't have the regret that. The young girl led the stranger upon the table and asked him to sit and eat. The man did not say a word but helped himself to food. He looked at the girl and wondered why he had intervened for him. Christmas Eve passed and Ramjo just as it always had. The stranger did not cause any trouble because he did nothing but sleep. They woke him up that he could have his meals in the evening. The Christmas tree was lighted 2 hours later. He was around once again to eat the Christmas fish and porridge. After getting up from the table, he went around and said thank you and good night to everyone present. The girl told him that the suit he wore was to be a Christmas present and he did not have to return it. If he wanted to spend the next Christmas Eve in peace, he would be welcomed back again. The man with the rat traps did not answer. He only stared at the young girl in limitless amazement. The next morning, the ironmaster and his daughter got up early and went to Christmas service. They drove back at 10 o'clock. The young girl sat and hung her head even more dejectedly than usual. At church, she had learnt that an old crofter of the ironworks had been robbed by a man who went around selling rat traps. The ironmaster feared that the man might have stolen many silver spoons from the cupboard. As the wagon stopped at the front steps, the ironmaster asked the valet about the stranger. The valet told him that the stranger had left. He had not taken anything with him at all, but he had left a package for Mrs. Williamson as a Christmas present. On opening the package, she gave a little cry of joy. She found a small rat trap, and in it lay 3 wrinkled 10-kroner notes. There was also a letter addressed to her. He did not want her to be embarrassed by a thief but act as a captain. He requested her to return the money to the old man on the roadside who had a money pouch hanging on the window frame as a bait for the poor wanderers. The rat trap was a Christmas present for a rat who would have been caught in this world's rat trap if he had not been raised to captain, because in that way he got power to power to clear himself. So, and he signed as Captain Von Stahl. So it was the summary of the chapter. Further, I will provide you one more video of this chapter, and in which I will try to provide you, I will provide you the Hindi summary of this chapter. Till then, if you not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe it for getting much more useful videos for you. Thank you all of you.